Hey guys, what's up? It's your host, Lizzie Jane, and we are back for another episode of the Lizzie Jane podcast. Today I have from overseas Gemma, also known as her project SIREN, joining me today on the podcast. Gemma, how are you doing?
I'm really great. I'm excited to be chatting with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that we could work it out. It was so crazy when we were going back and forth with the scheduling because I didn't originally know that you were are you in Madrid? Are you in somewhere else in Spain or?
I'm in Alicante actually, so I split my time between the UK, Alicante, and I go over to LA or the States as much as I possibly can.
Oh my gosh, busy, busy, busy woman. Wow, that's so exciting. And I feel like I overseas is got this whole other culture of dance music that we will definitely hop into. But I wanted to thank you for coming on today. And I'm so glad even with the crazy time changes and time zones, we could make it work. And let's just hop into it. You are a phenomenal drum and bass, neuro funk, neuro re-space, nasty bass producer. And it's been really lovely to watch you grow over the years. I think I came onto your music maybe 2 or 3 years ago for the first time. And since then, you have been stateside a number of times. You've done the Deadbeats events. You've done a number of events in LA. You've done some stops with Chase and Status. And you're coming back for Apocalypse this November, which is very exciting. I would love to take it back to the beginning and what got you into dance music. I would love to know a little bit about your background.
Yeah, it's really strange because I have don't come from a musical background at all. I went to uni, I studied bioveterinary science. My plan was always to be a vet and do that kind of thing. And then I decided once I'd graduated to go to Ibiza for a summer and never looked back. That changed it. I just realized this is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to do. And I invested myself in the industry from that point with various roles and then realized actually I do want to be the person on the stage, playing the music, making the music, and just feeding off the energy of the crowd. And so I started the journey.
That's so exciting. I feel like I hear that a bit more often than I would expect is like a lot of people obviously find their way in their own specific journey into our industry, but a lot of individuals kind of have that backseat behind the scenes backstage role and then they eventually go, "No, that's exactly what I want to do." So I would love for you to what like was your first position in music? Was it in drum and bass? Was it in house music? Like, did it start in London or did you work in Ibiza?
When I was in Ibiza, I started off as a ticket seller. So there was only one drum and bass night on the island, and it had Case and Status, Pendulum, Andy C. They were the regulars. Then Wilkinson and Dimension came along, Sub Focus. So I started off as a ticket seller for that night, walking up and down the beach, trying to get commission. And then I was always at the night. It was part of my job. And from there, I became the artist liaison and the stage manager at Amnesia every week when they were there. And I used that time to network and build a relationship with the artists and the management and navigate my way into the field.
That's so cool. That's oh my gosh, I can't imagine being like the first place that you had exposure to nightlife as one of the world's most renowned destinations for dance music and club culture. And I feel like anyone anywhere that loves EDM or just like music in general is aware of the culture that Ibiza kind of serves to the community. And I'm sure it's been just so wild. Kind of once you made that transition, were you spinning records first? Were you a DJ first? Did you get in the DAW first? Because I feel like the type of music you make in that specific subgenre of drum and bass is quite difficult. So how did you go from like starting as a producer, starting as a behind the scenes artist liaison to making some of the most complex drum and bass out there?
Yeah, it's I feel like the whole thing is kind of very surreal. Sometimes I think I separate between Gemma and Siren and I do something and think, was that really me? But it's because of that night, how I got my first set was Andy C had an all-night event there. And I cheekily said to him, who's going to warm up for you? And so he said, oh, do you want to do it? And from that being my first professional show, I then set myself the challenge of, well, within a year of this date, I will have made and released my first track. So that winter, I went away and I went to a production school in London, really hunkered down, focused on my skills. And yeah, sort of 10 months later, released my first track. And
I love
every
it.
track lesson since, really.
Oh my gosh, that's so what school did you attend in the UK, in London?
It's the London Sound of Academy.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Quite a few producers that are doing their thing have definitely gone there. That's so exciting. And also like Andy C being such a legend, that being your first show ever and that being kind of a liaison to say go get it is has to feel a bit surreal, especially because like from a like United States like stateside drum and bass lover, Andy C, Pendulum, Noisia, those were like the first three drum and bass acts that I came across, and so many other stateside DnB artists kind of like came to love. And then, you know, you've got the Visions label. And I'm always so jealous of the culture that you guys have overseas, but it really has started to bleed into America. And I would love to talk about that for a little bit, is just the movement that you see happening stateside. Because I know for us, like our like bass music is like dubstep, which would be like our number one of bass, but like your number one of bass, like overseas, is most likely drum and bass, and usually drum and bass and that kind of fracture. And everybody says that the United States are kind of the last but most impactful crowd of people to kind of take a trend in and take some like culture in from other spaces like worldwide. How has it been watching drum and bass come stateside and like you being a part of that movement?
It's really good to see, and it's really positive, the change. For me personally, from the day I started out, my goal was always to get over to the States and to be able to play, just because I have always, or I saw at the time, and now I feel the love for the music, the crowds, the energy. It was just somewhere I knew I wanted to be able to play. At the time, drum and bass wasn't so big, although people do tend to forget that drum and bass has been around for a long time in the States. There are those underground crews that have been supporting the genre for a long time. And so finally, they are getting their moment where they've been pushing it along for so long. And for me personally, I absolutely love coming over and playing. If I could be there all the time, I absolutely would. The crowds just seem to really, especially with my sound as well, really works. I think with the neuro being harder, and as you said, dubstep being a really big genre for you, the crossover isn't that too far apart. So the harder I play, the more I seem to get back, which is win-win.
I feel like that is so spot on for the American festival club culture goer, because I feel like on average the attendees are, they definitely span the ages of like late teens to mid 30s, but that those festival crowds are so much, I feel like in general younger than the crowds maybe in Europe or overseas. So you're getting these kids who just show up and they're ready to go. They're like ready to rattle. They're like, how much you can throw at me, we're going to throw that energy right back at you. And what are some of like the most like distinctive differences that you see, besides like the heavier I go, the heavier they play, between like a European festivals crowd or a United States festival crowd? Like, are you preparing your sets differently? Are you warming up for maybe somebody you're supporting differently on the stage? Like, how does that go?
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about my sets differently between Europe, UK, and the States. Europe, again, you can sort of get away with being a bit harder in your style. The journey can start a bit harder than what I would in the UK. The UK is a bit more dance floor led, a bit more commercially led, which is great. But for me, it means I'm adding in more vocals, more breaks every sort of 5, 10 tracks, putting in something that people can sing along to. When I'm in the States, again, what would be popular in the UK for a sing along isn't necessarily there, or they might not know it. So I will then be thinking about the rewind from a few years ago. What would have been the go off track then, and just throw it in and see how many people I can bring to the dance floor.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, I love that approach. Yeah, because I'm sure like kind of those pop culture centric records are so different overseas. And yeah, it's wild because We're definitely in a like rewind nostalgia phase where a lot of our bass music that is coming out right now is a lot of like remixes with like uncleared samples of like the 80s songs, 90s, early 2000s songs. Do you see that overseas right now as far as like people really like remix culture, bootleg culture has obviously always been a thing in dance music, but it is a thing right now that's so substantial stateside that it's like making or breaking careers and like musical projects currently.
Yeah, the right bootleg can take your career from not being known to being booked for every lineup. If you can hit that sweet spot with getting the right track and just really bringing it all together with the drum and bass element, it can change the whole thing. Particularly in the US, I found that it's the mashups that work really well. I love to do sort of throwback 90s hip hop R&B tracks, which I've either made my own mashups of or my friends have sent me them. And as soon as I throw those in, people absolutely go wild for it.
I love that. Yeah, and it's wild because the way that you kind of put together like a club set versus a festival set is so massively like end of the teeter-totter different. And I know you've come here and you've played obviously festivals, you've played big venues like Red Rocks and stuff with the Zed's Dead's Boys, and then also some really large venues with Chase and Status. But I know you've been a part of some underground shows as well. And kind of what you said before, where this movement has been pushing here stateside forever. It just hasn't gotten the eyes and the recognition that it really deserves until now. Like there's people like Fury and MC Dino and people who are like in their 40s and early 50s that have been pushing the sound since probably before I was born. And they're like, we've put in our time, like the time is now. How do you think that I've talked to American stateside DnB artists, and a lot of them kind of emulate a lot of the sounds that come out of the UK and overseas naturally. But then a lot of artists I've spoken to are like American drum and bass is going to sound and take like a different shape than UK drum and bass just because of like the listeners. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, do you think that like our version of drum and bass is going to be ultimately like sonically different than yours?
Yeah, I potentially, but what you make is what you're influenced by and what
Mhm.
inspires you. So if you're predominantly influenced by artists who might have come from the UK or elsewhere, then that's what you're going to instill into your own productions.
Mhm.
And it's a very personal thing. Making music, it's your own little piece of art. You could listen to anything. It could be a random track, like you said, an 80s track in the gym, and you might just hear something in there, one element like the synth, or you might just like the drum pattern and think, okay, I'm going to use that. I'm going to try and recreate something along those lines. So, yes, it will be different, but it will also have influences that we'll recognize and everybody will recognize.
100%. I see so many D&B artists stateside taking like the early like punk songs and like alternative rock songs that like we all knew in high school and middle school and twisting it up. And I'm like, I could hear it and I'm like, someone from America made this 100%. And then I'll hear somebody that sounds like a Manu or kind of like Bushwin or kind of that more like futuristic D&B, really almost like IDM istic drum and
Yeah.
bass. And I'm like, this is so not American. And it's so people in America like want to, I feel like they want to dance. And a lot of the time I've heard speaking to artists that come from overseas that like your crowds are so like different than stateside crowds and phenomenal in their own way, but they're so musically like educated that they can come off not necessarily snobby sometimes, but very like experienced in what they believe they should be expecting. Whereas like here, drum and bass is so new that it's kind of like if you can emulate that four on the floor with the 172, 175 drum beat, they're dancing, they're two stepping, they're going crazy, and they're just enjoying it.
Yeah, it's very true. I often say that, and not in a negative way at all, but in the UK, people are very clicky with what they like. They like a certain genre, subgenre of drum and bass, and they're loyal to that. It's great that they're loyal if that's the subgenre you're making.
Mhm.
Fantastic. But they don't like to deviate. It goes sort of in peaks and troughs, and they'll ride that wave for a bit, and then something else will come along, but it's sort of a 2-year cycle. And I think, like you said, because it is so new in the US, there's not that people aren't as loyal or dedicated to one style of drum and bass. They just like the sound in general. And then things that you can throw in that they are familiar with, well, what they'll remember. And then that will be a great set to them.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's crazy even thinking to your last record, which came out on Don Diablo's label Future, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. Wait, repeat yourself one more time. What is it called?
The track's called Vertigo.
Vertigo, and the vocalist on it was Tina D.
Tima D, yeah, an LA based.
Perfect.
Incredible.
Such a cool record, and like just kind of jumping from like that comparison of European and stateside fans, listeners, all that stuff. I feel like so many people, and correct me if I'm wrong, know Don Diablo not for drum and bass. They know Don Diablo for his future house and progressive house. And I remember when I sat down with him at Escape last year, and he started talking up drum and bass that he was making. And then I started to see clips, and then I started to see him playing his massive, New York City events. And I think he played a huge event in Spain, and then he did a huge like arena event in the UK. And half the time he was spinning drum and bass. So it's very interesting to me when you see artists of that caliber and that size for so long. Even people like Tiesto are now just dropping drum and bass during their sets. I feel like it says so much for like the culture and growth of it. And how was it to create that record? I would love for you to walk me through that process. And then also it gets signed to Don Diablo's label. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was a really nice moment. So it stemmed from another release I released last year with Bass Rush, a track called Power with another vocalist on. And after that had come out, the team reached out to me and said, "Hey, you're on our radar. If you've got anything, please send it our way." And so I just, at the time, didn't actually have anything to send. And I was in LA at the time, and I knew I had a session coming up with Tima. So I got down and just focused on writing this track. But what I wanted to do was find elements that were dance floor led and then create that neuro undertone so that I could have that perfect match between this neuro, which is where I'm at, and the dance floor, hopefully putting it within reach of a wider market, and then hand it over to Tima and say, "Where are we going with this?" And we sat down and we did it in a day. We came up with the hook, came up with the rest of the lyrics around that, and just focused on this one idea, sent it to them, and luckily they loved it straight away.
I feel like it's funny because you say that, because I listened to it and I'm like, this is a commercialized DnB record, but it has hints of like the heavier neuro bass, neurotones, like throughout the whole record, but it sits so well. I don't know. It's funny because I think of it as like future drum and bass, even though it came out on the Future label. Like, that's how I kind of look at it, because it's so melodic and it has a hook. It has everything that almost like a pop driven song would have for like a listener to attach themselves to, but then it has like the heavy underbody. And I think that that's the perfect blend of like making a main stage drum and bass record, so it fits Don Diablo's label so well. And I know one of the first times that I came along your music was on the DnB and L compilation, I believe you released with them a few years ago, right?
Yeah, it was a compilation with Deadbeats. And I was on there, the latest drop. That was a 4/4 track I made again, which was more dance floor led, but with heavy distortion within those basses, just to stay true to myself. I think I have actually made quite a few different tracks, in the sense of I haven't been like stuck and focused on one thing. But the thing that always makes it my track is that everything is very distorted and very neuro driven, even if that's not coming through as a main element at the time.
Is that something when you started to, obviously, the journey of production is long and windy and never the same for any one individual, but when you started to kind of garner your sound and decide like what the SIREN project would sound like, be like, look like, did you draw yourself to like, are you a sound design producer where you start and you design sounds and then you build the rest of the song around it? Do you like working with a vocalist in a session and then designing the song around maybe piano chords? Like, how does your creative process roll into one of your records?
I normally start. Always have. I drop in my drums, my drum stems from another track, and I always think that's a good place to
Same.
start. And then, yeah, I mean, I think everyone does that. And then I always tend to have a drop idea, and I'll start with that first 16 of the drop, focus on that, get that first hit, first impact of it coming in really strong. And then I'll go back and work on the intro and the elements and the melody, because that is the that I find harder. I find the drop that comes naturally. I know how I want it to sound. I know where I want it to go. I'll often drop in another track that I've been inspired by, or another couple of tracks, and try and recreate elements and then put my own twist on it through just the like plugins that I use, or the distortion or something like that from there. And then I'll sit down and think about whether it suits having a vocal, whether I could just sample something, or if I really need to then have a session with a singer. But that's not a common thing for me. And maybe it's something I'd like to introduce more, working with vocalists. But
Mhm.
particularly with the tracks that I have made, apart from Vertigo and Power and even Dimension, they've just been really heavily led and less musical, I would say.
Definitely like like sound design forward versus like the actual vocals or melody for it. And that's why I think you had a back to back with Skeleton a little bit ago, right? Right?
Yeah,
Okay,
we've got a
yes.
couple now. Yeah.
I feel like that's so perfect because she is the only stateside led artist that I feel like really pushes like a comparable sound to you that is like here, because so many of our stateside DnB acts are really pushing kind of like either really kind of headexy bass forward music, or they're pushing like commercialized drum and bass. So you kind of have those in between, because I definitely feel like it's harder to pursue the sound that you guys have kind of fit in that bucket. But there's such a cool like circle of artists that do that. And I know she released on Eat Brain like a year plus ago. She was on a compilation and that was a huge deal for her. And you just had a release on Eat Brain, which was obviously a huge goal for you. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I must say, Skeleton is the neuro queen of the States. Absolutely love her. She's a good friend of mine. So when we play back to back, we really vibe off of each other. And it's great because I think, oh, you played that right. Now I'm going to play this.
Mhm.
um, and Eat Brain for me it was a goal from day one. I just always wanted to release on Eat Brain. If you're into neurofunk, then you want to release on Eat Brain. And I was constantly sending Jade tracks to, is this right? Is this right? And for a couple of years, none of them were right, but it pushed me to be better, to work harder, to upskill. I'm really grateful for that, and all the guidance that he gave. And then finally he was like, yeah, this is the one. Let's do it. Let's put it on the compilation. And it came out. And I feel as though it's just the start, hopefully, of my relationship with them.
That's so exciting. And I feel like that's it's so lovely because I feel like there's not a lot of labels nowadays, just with like social media and like how many other factors play into a label, like having interest in your art and it's simply being about the art. That is so few and far between now. So to have a label like Eat Brain where it's like, hey, you're doing really cool things, everything is going how it should, but this isn't like we need this to be up to a certain caliber. I feel like that's how a label like long term grows and sustains that reputation of just being a phenomenal place for, in specific, that kind of neuro funk, neuro jam, neuro bass type of dance music. And I think that that is like so exciting because I feel like I remember hearing Skeleton talk about it as well. And I think that that was just like a huge moment because kind of if you get into that small community, it's like, all right, my music now is at this standard that I feel like it can really like play games with all of the other records or artists that I've looked up to in this specific subgenre of drum and bass. Because I feel like as you start as an artist, you especially making something that's hard, and all bass music is difficult. You start making records and then you're spinning them and you go, well, my record doesn't sound like the other records. And how do I mix and mash up all my stuff, even if I use a reference track and even if I followed the YouTube University, tutorial series, it just isn't sounding the same. And then once you finally get to that level, which is literally just time and patience usually and hours put in, you kind of turn around and go, okay, it's really cool to be able to drop all of my records now in my 60 to 90-minute set.
Yeah, that is, yeah, and I hope to be at that point where I can play a set and play all my own music at some point. And back to just commenting on Eat Brain, it really is, as you said, I feel as a nod of approval that you've worked hard and yeah, you are credible now to be able to release on here. It doesn't matter if you've got 5 followers, 500, 5,000. It's purely down to how good your music is and if it meets that final product that they want. That mix down has to be so tight. And mix downs are just something that take me forever to do to get perfect. I put off and I think, oh gosh, do I really need to do that? But it just takes time. Like you said, it takes hours and you listen to the track so many times and all the elements on repeat and just think eventually you do have to draw a line under it.
Literally. And the type of music you're mixing down is like so difficult. It's just without even saying it, it's like so difficult. Like everything from the phasing to making sure certain elements don't take over other elements. Every time I've worked with any type of neuro bass, I'm ready to like slam my head against the wall. So I can't imagine it being like predominant factors of layering of everything and making it sound pristine, because that on like a huge sound system is incredibly captivating. I feel like the difference between seeing like your average DnB act now and seeing like Noisia or Pendulum or, certain guys that are like have those influences, there's just a wall of sound versus it being very kind of like, we're gonna simplify everything and then just mix it down as clean as humanly possible. It's like the most intricate set of number of tracks and then what you have to do for them to sound proper on any like listening media platform, which is wild. And I would love to get into your shows with Chase and Status. They obviously have been kind of the new age kind of forward name alongside with the Worship Crew that has really taken like America by storm. You had a chance to support them here stateside. How did that come about? Did you guys know each other before? Have you sent them music? Like how did that tour come into one?
Yeah, well, I do. I do know them from the Ibiza days, of course, being there, being a regular, and just being a raver myself, being involved. And I'm always sending music back and forth to Will for advice when I can, because I was a resident in Ibiza for their night as well. I saw them regularly over a couple of years period. And when it came to the US shows, their manager was going through mixes that people had submitted or people had on their SoundCloud. And it just so happened that mine was one that they liked enough to allow to support them on the tour. And it purely came from the music and the mix and that element, which was
That's
fantastic.
awesome.
And what an opportunity. I was so happy to be a part of it and to be involved.
Those shows looked absolutely crazy. I know they're coming here to Denver soon to play at a new venue. We just opened an under the bridge type of venue that they're going to play at, which is like a very, I feel like so many we've transitioned from like regular clubs and like music venue rooms, which are so fitting for a lot of styles of music, but now like people want these like experiences. So I feel like the pop-ups and like the weird out there venues are just really exploding here right now. And I'll be very intrigued to see how their show goes here under a bridge. It's going to be super, super interesting and out there. And with you're coming back for Apocalypse, which is with Insomniac, which is in California. It's at the end of November. And are you excited? Are you like stoked to be back here in the States? Will you be back in the States before then?
Yes, I'm actually back, not this weekend coming. I'm back and end of August. I'm going to Minneapolis. I have been there before on the Chase and Status tour, so I'm going back, which will be fantastic. I can't wait. I've already been sort of conversing with people online that were there last time. They'll be coming along this time, which is fantastic if people like you the first time and come again. And then there's a few shows in between, and the main thing being Apocalypse, which I am super, super, super excited for. I've been wishing to be on that lineup for a couple of years. It's such a peak event in the calendar for everybody, and most people coming over to the US do aspire to be on the Apocalypse lineup, and I cannot wait.
It's so crazy because the Apocalypse in like the Insomniac events umbrella is fairly new. And when I remember when it dropped a few years ago, I was like, this is the biggest representation of drum and bass that I've seen, period. And every year it's just grown and grown and grown. And now I'm like, we kind of have an even playing field between D&B and bass music, which never happens. You usually have one stage, one day that's D&B, or you have a few acts kind of sprinkled. And I'm like, half of this lineup are international acts, which is so, so cool. And I feel like it's so important because will continue to like influence us and I think challenge us to grow in the ways and make the decisions of what we want D&B to be represented as it becomes, bigger stateside. And I know like it's also very important for like companies like Insomniac and like larger promotional event companies to bring you guys here because it helps your like validity on getting a green card or getting whatever type of work visa, which I know is quite difficult.
Yes, it is very difficult and it's a lengthy process. I feel as though I was quite lucky at the time when I got mine. It all happened very quickly and I had a lot of shows in already, so that helped. Certainly, like you said, being involved in part of anything with Insomniac, their shows and having the release with Bass Rush, it's a real privilege to be a part of that part of the industry. They're pioneers, they're tastemakers, they bring you over. And like I said with Eat Brain, it's that stamp of approval. And you really become part of what is the scene in the States, even if that's slightly different to what the scene looks like in the UK. It's the demand in the market over here, which for me, I'm most interested in.
100%. It's wild because I talk to so many like stateside artists and everybody wants to switch. I think people here see like Boomtown and they go, I want to do that. That looks absolutely maddening, absolutely insane, especially D&B artists here because the scene just there's not that many people yet that are willing to 40,000 people under one kind of flying stage is not going to happen yet here for D&B. But then you talk to anyone that's in your position or any international artist and they just go, your crowds are so welcoming and pleasing and you can kind of do whatever you want and they're just happy to be there. And it's kind of like rewinding back in time to a lot of the guys who have been around for decades and they go, I can come and I can play a set that I made 10 years ago and kids are going to go crazy. And that just doesn't happen overseas.
No, and what I love as well is some people are performers, some aren't, some just want to be a DJ and just play the music, and there's absolutely no shade on whichever category you fall in. That's my moment to come out of my shell. Day to day, I'm very much an introvert, but when I'm on stage, that's when I get to be an extrovert. And particularly in the US, that's when I can jump up on the decks. That's when I can be on the mic. That's when I can really just give absolutely everything and throw myself into it. And almost it's like I'm DJing, but I'm also in the crowd with you. And I want to throw down as hard as you do.
Well, because MCs here are like not a thing. They're like not like they are sometimes, but in very, very, very rare situations. And I feel like, yeah, you all just being able to like be on the mic and be a little bit more connected to the crowd versus kind of be this like third layer has to be kind of not a culture shock, but just like a performance change in the way that you approach things.
Yeah, it really is. And certainly some of the things that I would do when I'm in the US, particularly being on the mic or jumping up on the decks, it wouldn't go down as well in the UK because, again, it's that kind of we're just here for the music. Just play me the music of the genre and subgenre that I want to hear, and the Beatport top 10 or something, or give me a 90s throwback. And I want to be part of that performance element. That's why I love it.
Well, I think that's why here you get a lot of artists that are really like performance is their number one because that's what people want. Like they want to be, it's so interesting the duality because overseas, it seems like from an outer point of view and speaking to people like yourself, you really are supposed to be the DJ, like what the DJ is known for. Like, don't look at me, don't watch me. I am here on stage, but I'm really just playing a soundtrack to what you're ideally wanting with a bunch of layering 4 tracks at a time and you're hearing these mashups in a different way. Whereas here, there's so much of a performative element, whether it's having time coded visuals or a special guest out to join you, or, every bass DJ in the world is like jumping off the decks at the same time. And that would just not happen overseas. And it definitely has put the music is like oftentimes, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it's oftentimes like equally as important as what your show looks like or as the performative element because people just want that like attention factor during the show of like what to do. It's like you're at this huge stage, there's thousands of people. What are you going to do for us? What are you going to give us? The lasers, the strobe lights, the pyro, the fire, the confetti, all of that is definitely like the commercialized American like lane for dance music now.
Yeah, certainly. And it's an all immersive experience. People want
Mhm.
to feel as though all their senses are being attacked. And particularly now with the way the social media culture is, people have very short attention spans. So not only do you have to be creative with your mixing to retain them, you need to be able to have visuals, have that production element, the lighting, as you said, which if they lose a little bit of interest here, okay, we've got them because of the visuals. Oh, we've got them because there's been some flames going off and everybody's boiling hot. It's just something to keep. What is it? Sort of, they say with TikTok or something, it's 3 seconds, it's 5 seconds. So you need to have constantly elements that are coming in, going and changing. And that's part of it. It really isn't just about what you're stood up there playing anymore.
I know. It's crazy because you have so many people who are like, oh, I just want it to be about the music. And then you have so many people that are like, it's the performance and it's everything. And I think it's meeting somewhere in the middle of where that happy medium is to have the music as that brick stone block that's most important to build, the house of your project on or the house of that set for that show on. But also understanding that there is a set of guidelines that people, because of their attention span, has to be drawn to now. And that's why people like what you said earlier, Insomniac has been just like a tastemaker and they're they've set an example and a standard for what can be done in a performative space. And I think that that's why EDC Las Vegas and all of these festivals have become what they are versus, now I see you've got the duality where you kind of have the pop-ups starting to happen, which happen all the time overseas. And I feel like it's very regular to have a Saturday where you've got, Alex Perez's label throwing a pop-up at a bake shop and people, there's no production, there's nothing, there's a set of ex DJs and it's kind of like a day party and people are bringing some of that here. So now you kind of have the duality of like the intimate experience versus the cannonballs of confetti and flames and all of that stuff. So I feel like it's that's America. It's like you kind of have a little bit of everything, which totally makes sense. And I know you have some new music coming out in October. If we could talk about that, so maybe your fans could get a little bit excited about what is potentially coming up.
Yes, I am very, very excited. So my goal, as I said from when I started, was to release on Eat Brain. And also another goal was to release with Blackout. Anybody who's in the Neurofunk scene will know that these two labels are the champions of that Neurofunk sound and that well-crafted, well-produced music. So in October, have my first release with Blackout. It's a 2-track single release. I'm so excited and just feel as though I'm really saying, this is who I am. This is my music. Eat Brain Blackout. You know where I'm going from here. And it is Neuro all the way.
I love that. Oh, that's so exciting. Huge congratulations. That's awesome that it's an A-B sided release. So it's like a mini EP kind of deal.
Yeah.
And that's so lovely. And it's been so like awesome to see you grow stateside and obviously continue to do all these things elsewhere. And I think it's a huge goal as an artist to be able to create the type of art that you want and then also find success in it. Cause I think a lot of people battle with that, especially as they're growing and they're up and coming. And there's so many people now who are like, do this and do that, and there's a formula, and you have seemed to kind of stick to your vision and your roots, and it seems like a lot of stuff is coming to fruition, which is very exciting. And we'll have your mix on Insomniac Radio on my show that I hope these singles will be in. I want the new Don Diablo future single, and I want the Eat Brain record, and then the AB releases. I'll be very excited to hear those in your mix. Yes. Is there anything else that you would want to leave with any listeners that are currently supporting your project stateside or overseas?
The only thing I can say is thank you to absolutely everybody that's been to one of my shows in the States, anybody that takes the time to message me after a set. Those messages mean so much, to have that appreciation, to know that all that time and effort that you've gone, not just for the set, but to travel, to be there. People have enjoyed it and they felt like they got to know you. That means more to me than anything. And I hope to be able to keep delivering and keep coming back and giving you more and more.
I love it. That's so lovely. Why, I absolutely hope to finally meet you in person soon. There is a chance that I will be at Apocalypse. So if I am at Apocalypse, I really hope that we meet then. And if not, I'm sure our paths will cross sometime soon. And I really appreciate you for joining me today. And we'll have your mix and we'll release this full podcast and put a little snippet of it before your mix on Insomniac, and it'll be great.
I'm very grateful to you, and I appreciate being here and chatting with you. It's been lovely, and I really do hope that you are at Apocalypse.
I know, me too. We're gonna make it happen. We're absolutely gonna make it happen.
Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I hope your day tomorrow is great. And I will talk to you soon.